disruptive.
Weird thing to happen. I don't know if people saw this recently, but Doug the Dunce Ford is at it again. Ontario Premier Doug the Dunce Ford showing once again how hysterical he can get. So, according to the Post Millennial, it says, in response to Crown Royal closing a bottling plant in Ontario and moving its bottling plant to the United States, Premier Doug Ford tells their CEO, "You hurt my people, I'm going to hurt you." Oh, man. I feel like he's one of those people that just finally discovered what The Sopranos is and now really into it. I tell you that James Gandolfini is going to go places. I like that guy. I like the cut of his jib. You hurt my people, I'm going to hurt you. You guys are about as dumb as a bag of hammers for doing this. And then he proceeds to pour the bottle of whiskey out onto the ground in front of the cameras. Why? Because he cares so much about Ontario. He cares so much about it that he is going to go on camera and make a theatrical show about this, be an hysterical rump that he is, and then probably cry on cue when he goes on to CNN or MSNBC, you know, his regularly scheduled interviews about Donald Trump, and how awful he is. But watch how embarrassing this is.
Well, so you know something, a message to the CEO in France, you hurt my people, I'm going to hurt you. You're going to feel the pain in February when these people don't have a paycheck. And I'm going to stand up for the people of Ontario, and I encourage all of Canadians, all of Ontarians, stand up for the people, because you don't know if you're next. But the thing that ticks me off, I get it. I get that companies move back and forth. But what I don't get, when you're someone's largest customer in North America, you're going after the largest customer. You know something?
You know something? It makes me so mad. I gotta talk to Rachel Maddow about this. It makes me so mad that I gotta leave Ontario to go talk to my golf buddies in the United States. It makes me so mad. Ugh! I just want to get a bunch of foreigners into convenience stores and restaurants and fast food chains to steal the jobs. I am so angered. I am so angered. There will be a rat to pay. All this demonstrates, all this shows is how awful the elbows up pro-Canadian psyop is going. And I say it is a psyop. The only reason that it was used effectively was to get Mark Carney elected. That's literally the only purpose that it had. It didn't really do anything to combat the problems that we have in this country. It's not actually solving any of the tariff disputes between Canada and the United States. In fact, Canada wants these tariffs to keep going. So they have this excuse, so they can keep peddling on this just nonstop rhetoric that just makes absolutely no sense. Like, Crown Royal is Canadian whiskey. It's made in Canada, specifically because we have the ingredients to make that whiskey. What, do you think Crown Royal is going to taste good when they make it out of Detroit Flint River water? When it's contaminated like that? Well, why do they move it to West Virginia? They can go suck out the water stream coming out of the DuPont plant. I bet that would taste good. But Doug Ford is going to go on a hysterical rant about, you know, it makes me so angry. I get the companies are moving back and forth. I get that. But it makes me so angry. It makes me so angry. I have to do this because I'm on camera. Even though he's not, you know, angered about the airline workers and, you know, fighting for them to get a decent wage. He's not angry at the people that were, you know, thrown aside when it came to COVID. You know, all the essential workers that people like him and Justin Trudeau and all the rest of the government officials praised at the start of the pandemic. And then all of a sudden they decide, hey, I don't think these mandates are effective in combating this virus. I think it's more harmful to society. Maybe we should do something about it. They got angered. They got angered at those essential workers, the truckers. I don't see him getting frustrated and angered about that. I don't see him getting flustered and angered that two predominant Canadians that all they did was organize a peaceful demonstration are getting 8 years sentence. But no, Crown Royal moves their bottling plant outside of Ontario. Arrgh! The dog will get you! Ford Nation!
I always say smart people aren't too smart, and you guys are about as dumb as a bag of hammers for doing this. So, you know something? I found a bottle, and I don't even drink, of Crown Royal, right? I see that Crown Royal. I saw it at home. So this is what I think about Crown Royal. That's what they could do. And I think everyone else should do the same thing. Start supporting companies that make whiskey here by Ontario people.
You know, it would help Ontario more if he donated that Crown Royal to the food bank. You know, the 2 million people a month that are lined up at food banks that Doug Ford doesn't care about. You know, that's how much he helps Ontario. That's how much he cares so much about the province. 2 million people a month at food banks. There's a homelessness epidemic. There's a fentanyl crisis. Crime is skyrocketing. You remember the last time we covered Doug Ford? He was like, oh, this home intruder broke in and then he got charged. Something should be done about that. Yes, you could do something about it. Just like you could do something to stop Crown Royal from going elsewhere. You can make a deal with them. You can reach out to them instead of being this pissy baby and whine that a company's making a financial decision to say, hey, we're looking elsewhere. And considering the fact they just praised the idea that, yeah, companies move around and they go elsewhere. It's not a big deal. But it is a big deal because I'm kind of like the premium. Ah! Like how freaking embarrassing this is. How embarrassing this is. And to watch him pour Crown Royal, a Canadian-made whiskey, while trying to pretend that he's still pro-Canadian worker. We're going to fight Trump and his tariffs. We're going to fight. We're going to make Ontario great. Ontario's open for business. Just shows what absolute lunacy these people are. Absolute lunatics. That they don't mean what they say, that it's obviously a psyop, it's obviously to dupe people, it's to bait people into liking these hacks that don't do anything for you. They don't do anything for you. The only purpose that Elbows Up gave to someone like Mark Carney was to get him elected. To get you idiots to fall into line and to vote for a central banker into office. How did that work out? How is that working out? Probably not well. Probably not well. So, here, this is from Global News. They break this down. It says, the looming closure of an Ontario plant that bottles Crown Royal sparked political blowback this week, but a supply chain expert says the company behind the move faced pressuring decisions on how to cut costs amid ongoing financial challenges. Spirits maker Diageo? How do you say that? Diageo? Found itself in Doug Ford's crosshairs on Tuesday when the Ontario Premier capped an unrelated press conference by producing a Crown Royal bottle and proceeding to slowly dump it onto the ground. Ford was protesting Diageo's announcement last week. It will cease operations as bottling facility in Amherstburg, Ontario in February 2026 as it shifts some bottling volumes to the United States. So that's a very noticeable keyword. Some. Doesn't mean all the operations. It doesn't mean everything is going to the United States. Again, this is a Canadian whiskey company. They still grow the ingredients to make the booze here in Canada. They still have to do that. So Crown Royal is not doing this to, piss off Ontario and, give Canada the middle finger. They're doing this because of financial struggles. Because we know a lot of businesses in Ontario and else in Canada are feeling the same way. that they're feeling threatened because of how our government is operating in bringing in business to this country. They're threatening the financial stability of a lot of these companies, and they're looking elsewhere because they can't rely on having as many sales or as many people buying their product to keep up with the rise in taxes, with the rise of all this regulatory capture that the Canadian government, that other agencies are posing themselves into. They can't deal with that. So they're looking elsewhere. They're looking in the United States. Maybe because it's cheaper. Maybe it's because it's more feasible. Maybe because it's a little more laxing for a bottling plant to operate in the United States than it would be to continue in Ontario with the massive amount of taxes. And Ford could do something about it, but of course he's not going to. Ford said the company is about as dumb as a bag of hammers for doing this, as he encouraged others to dump out their Crown Royal whiskey and instead support alternatives made within the province. You hurt my people, I'm going to hurt you, Ford said in a vague warning to the company. The political wrath extended across party lines, with NDP MPP Lisa Gretzky musing in a recent social media post about whether Crown Royal should be pulled from shelves at Ontario's alcohol retailer, the LCBO. Seriously? Seriously. Again, this is Canadian whiskey. Canadian whiskey. And they want to pull more of that off the LCBO shows. You wonder why LCBO is collapsing. Why Doug Ford went behind the backs of the LCBO and the beer store and catered to his business buddies at the convenience store, at Circle K, at Loblaws, at grocery retailers, went behind the backs of the LCBO and beer store and started selling alcohol over there, and wasted about $1 billion in a campaign to bring liquor that could be easily sold at the LCBO. No one had a problem with it. No one was concerned about it. Nobody was, up in arms about, hey, we need to sell more liquor in grocery stores. Nobody was that. But Doug Ford did that. Doug Ford went around the LCBO, and now he's getting angry at the LCBO for not pulling Crown Royal off the shelves and getting people like the NDP to also respond to it. It's just crazy. Diageo did not directly cite tariffs or broader trade tensions when announcing its decision. Instead, it said the facility will close in a move aimed at improving its North American supply chain. It comes amid financial hardship for the company after last month reporting a 28% year-over-year decline in operating profits, punctuated by recent announcement around the departure of its CEO and massive cost reduction plan, said Fraser Johnson, a professor of operations management at Ivy Business School. So again, Crown Royal is not doing this to spite Canadians. They're not doing this to be like, up you and get out of here. They're doing this because they know they're in financial hardship. And Doug Ford could do something about this. Doug Ford could easily have a conversation directly with Crown Royal and stop or try to negotiate for keeping the plant here. He could easily do something about it, but he's not going to. Instead, he's going to have a hissy fit on camera, let the company do its doing in moving the facilities over the states, and it's just going to leave Ontario's high and dry. So it doesn't do anything for anybody for him to do this, for putting on this show. And it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to what a premier is supposed to do, which is supposed to defend the people of Ontario. It goes against pretty much everything they've stated that they claim to be when it comes to being pro-Canadian and elbows up and, the one Canadian economy. We're going to fight for Canadian jobs. Well, a bottling plant is about to drop ship because of financial hardship, and you're just going to boo-hoo and cry about it. How's that defending workers? How's that defending workers? So I like this post here. This is from T.Resident, and it says, Crown Royal bottler with 160 employees closes. He gets into a frantic. Versus the beer store with 6,500 employees gone. He's all giddy about it. And this is coming from repost from Isaac Callan. It says new, another 6 beer store locations are set to shut in Ontario by early November. That will leave the company close to exceeding the maximum number of store closures allowed under its $225 million deal with the government. So, as he's complaining about a bottle factory that supposedly has only 160 employees, that give or take, I don't know the exact number, but he's getting frantic about that, and compared to him deliberately going against the beer store, forcing it to close down, and 6,500 employees at the retailer will be losing their jobs. And he's giddy about it. Why? Because it works for his buddies. It works for his donors. Not for you, not for Ontario, but it works for his donor base. The donor base that works at convenience stores, the donor base that owns the, chain stores, that owns these mega corporations, that didn't have to have Doug Ford spend taxpayer dollars to finance a campaign to get liquor onto their shelves. But he did it anyway behind your back. So here's Ryan Gertson pointing this out. It says, this is the Crown Royal Distillery. This is the distillery in Manitoba. It's a 360-acre property along Lake Winnipeg, housing 1.5 million barrels of whiskey in warehouses covering 5 acres. It's the only place in the world making this product before it's shipped for bottling. Doug Ford just told all of Canada to dump it out and basically boycott them. So Doug Ford doing what he did, he thinks that this is going against the bottling portion of this, but him dumping it out and boycotting Crown Royal is also going to affect these jobs. The people that actually manufacture the whiskey, which is purposely made in Canada because that is where the ingredients are grown. That is where the water is. That is where the production of the whiskey is made, which is why it's a Canadian product. And Doug Ford's telling you, oh, you can't buy this because they're taking their bottling facilities across the border. Trump. Do you think that's going to help their jobs? Do you think it's going to benefit them that you're telling Canadians to dump out their whiskey and boycott this company? Do you think that's going to help in the process? Christy for Change points out, Canadian jobs are shutting down because Mark Carney convinced a bunch of sheep to put their elbows up. Doug Ford took all American alcohol out of liquor stores. Now companies like Crown Royal are shutting down their Canadian warehouses. Effing idiots. Now watch it continue. And there it is. Crown Royal bottler closes down Ontario plant, shifting some operations to the United States. Again, that's big key word there. Some. And Doug Ford doesn't tell you that. Some of the operations are heading to the United States. He's also not telling you why they're moving to the United States, even though it's clear that because of the financial decision that Crown Royal and the bottling plant have to endure, that they're looking elsewhere because Ontario is bleeding them dry. And Doug Ford could easily have negotiations, try to reason with them, and try to, lower the tax rates and not make it a financial burden to run a company and facilitate in Ontario. That would encourage a lot of these companies to not jump ship out of Ontario. That would encourage a lot more business in the province. But Doug Ford's not doing that. Doug Ford would rather have a hissy fit about absolute nonsense. Here's Stacy. Overall sales at LCBOs in Ontario are down since Doug Ford removed American booze from the shelf. He wants to boycott Crown Royal, which is Canadian made. People in Ontario are now ordering American booze from Alberta. Doug's anti-American act is losing bigly. This PSYOP is not helping people. This PSYOP is designed and developed to go against Canadians. to go against Canadians. It was there to manufacture consent for you to select a billionaire-backed banker, a central banker who came directly from the World Economic Forum, from the Bank of England, and from the Bank of Canada to systematically destroy the country. That's why Elbows Up exists. It's not there to help you. It's not there to fight against the tariffs. It's there purposely by design to get you people into line to allowing a central banker and the global elite to capture the rest of Canada. We already saw a lot of it with Justin Trudeau. As you know, Justin Trudeau's cabinet was punctured by the WEF. That's what Klaus Schwab said. We penetrated Trudeau's cabinet. And now with Mark Carney as prime minister, he's fulfilling that promise that Canada's going to be completely captured by the WEF. And speaking of getting angry at companies for moving their, headquarters or the businesses off to the United States, where's the anger for this? Where's the anger for this? Brookfield. That's Mark Carney's asset firm. Brookfield moves headquarters to New York in corporate restructuring aimed at boosting investor base. Inclusion in the prize S&P 500, however, might elude the Canadian company, says analyst. Really? You mean a Canadian company that just elected one of its members to be prime minister of the country that claimed he's going to help support Canadians during this troubled time, moved his headquarters to New York City? It's almost like you got duped. It's almost like it was a psyops. It's almost like they did this intentionally. Like, all the elbows up rhetoric is a complete joke. And why I never took any of it seriously. Because I knew that there was some sort of insidious attachment to it. That all of a sudden, this, faux pas patriotism that, buy Canadian products away from America. I knew that there was something attached to it, that politicians wouldn't just be upfront about this, that there had to be some sort of connection. And now we're seeing that more and more businesses that Mark Carney's a part of, that Doug Ford's a part of, that all these politicians that they claim to be supporting, Canadians and Canadian economy and the jobs and everything Canadian, is doing their investments elsewhere. So where's the anger for this? Where's the boycott for this? Or how about Bell? Remember this? Bell ditches remote Labrador connectivity project, takes business to the U.S. instead. Canada's largest telecommunications company has abandoned a $32 million high-speed internet project, instead opting to invest $5 billion to expand its fiber blueprint in the United States. Do you think Doug Ford's going to get angry at Bell? Do you think he's going to get angry at them for, moving their business to the United States? Do you think he's going to get angry that we wasted $32 million trying to bring high-speed internet to remote areas in Newfoundland and Labrador? Where's the anger for that? Of course, they're not going to get angry at Bell because Bell owns CTV. They own a lot of media assets. They own a lot of radio stations. They are the biggest telecommunications giant in the country next to Rogers. They're not going to get angry at them because they're the ones that are towing the line for their narratives. They're the ones pushing for Doug Ford and Mark Carney and the establishment because they're getting subsidies from the government. So this whole thing of elbows up and we're going to fight for Canadian jobs is an absolute wreck. It's an absolute wreck used to undermine you. It's used purposely to completely undermine you. While they got you in a trance to think that, we're going to support Canadian jobs, Canadian facility. We're going to support the Canadian economy. The reality of the matter is the politicians within Canada are deliberately going against you. They're completely crossing the line. They're completely going outside to fulfill their promises of their donor class that is looking to hollow out Canada and its investment and all the opportunity and all the business incentive that resort in this country, and they're looking elsewhere. Why do you think Brookfield, that claims to be, very, very important to net zero and greenhouse emissions and how we're going to, create this new climate-based economy, is putting a lot of investment into fossil fuel companies in foreign nations? While they claim that we have to go net zero here in Canada, they're investing in oil sands in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. While we have to get everybody into an electric vehicle and waste more taxpayer money to try to bring EV plants to Ontario, which we know that is a catastrophe, they're putting money towards a coal plant in China. So it's all just complete a psyop. It's all just a big, giant psyop to dupe people, to think that these people are still irrelevant to the Canadian cause when really they are against you. Doug Ford has no intentions to serve Ontario. His intentions is to serve himself and his billionaire donors that live within the Toronto area. That is his true intentions, and that is why he is going to make a theatrical show about how we need to boycott Crown Royal because of a bottling plant, because they're moving some of the manufacturing to the United States. He thinks we need to boycott the whole company, even though the rest of the company still has business ties within Canada. Because Crown Royal is a Canadian company. It's Canadian whiskey, hence why it's based within Canada. And for him to boycott Crown Royal is for him to boycott all the other workers. But he does not care about that. He does not care about that. He'll just go on mainstream television. He'll go on to MSNBC and CNN and cry on cue about how Trump is doing this and how it's Elon Musk's fault that he could have actually done something to protect Ontario jobs. That he could have done something to negotiate with the company to keep and maintain production facilities within Ontario. He could have done something, but he refuses not to.